And we're live. WeatherBrains episode number 613. This is the pre-show for October 16th, 2017. We're laid back, we're kicked back, and this is where we share boring personal stories, occasional humorous anecdotes, and from time to time we say things that are extremely, excessively outrageous. The real show begins in about 8 minutes, so this is where we can sit back and say some crazy things. Crazy things. Anybody have any crazy things you want to say tonight? Brian's teaching a spotter class tomorrow night. That's somewhat crazy.
Where is it going to be?
I want to know. I want to know what everybody thinks of the head of the Weather Service, or whatever his position is going to be in NOAA.
I think Barry and Bill Murray are good buddies, aren't you? Aren't you guys tight?
He refused to come on the show, all that time, and I think he knew all along he was going to get it, so he could wait till he's on. So now we ought to be able to get him, don't you think?
So
I would hope so.
So is it like what's the deal? I'm so busy I can't keep up with all this. So what is the procedure to get this guy in that position? What happens next?
I don't think know if that has to be approved or not.
I don't think so.
So the president just picks some guy or whoever, and they're in without any.
Yeah.
Well, dang.
Could have picked you, James.
Oh yeah. Like I've really got time to do that. So Barry Myers of AccuWeather.
That'll be interesting.
I wish Kevin was here. He'd be the guy that'd be.
Where's Kevin? We need Kevin tonight.
Well, he says he has some new equipment or something. What do you do? Train for 3 weeks? I mean, if I train for 3 hours, I'm lucky on the new stuff we get here. But he says he's out. Rick Smith is out. Apparently, Rick didn't want to see. These guys do not want to comment on that situation. You would think Kevin would want to, however.
Oh, he would want to. Yeah, he would.
Okay, an article I just read said that if confirmed.
Yeah, I guess he does have to be confirmed.
So I guess he's got to be confirmed by somebody.
Surely there's some kind of a process here. Hey, Jeff, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Perfect.
Good.
Perfect.
Good.
This is working.
This
is working.
Now if we just get Steve on here, we'll be ready to roll.
Yeah, we got 6 minutes, Jeff. We have to wait on local television to hit at the bottom of the hour, and then we'll get this sucker started. So
okay, that's fine.
We typically turn on everything about 15 minutes beforehand just to be sure folks are on and the everything's working. Somebody just sent a note. You see that one? Yeah. All right, Todd. I like it. This is y'all. The title of the email is pre-show material. Y'all should include it in the podcast or make it a separate episode or even a mini episode. It's just as good as the main material. I've always said that. Most of our show
the premium version.
Yeah, that's right. For our premium subscribers, most all the show titles and the really obnoxious stuff happens right now. So there you go. And I'm going to mute Jeff to be sure. I think he walked away for a second.
Yeah, we get polite in the real show, right?
Yeah, no, that's great. Todd, thanks. No, we're in here just screaming and going these tirades and 8:30 hits. Good evening and welcome to Weather. We go NPR, good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
The thing that bothers me about Barry Myers, and I don't know the gentleman, but it bothers me that he's involved with a company that wants to, or wanted at one point to, do away with the Weather Service. And it just seems like it's a conflict of interest.
Mm-hmm.
Notice Bill's not saying anything. He knows something.
I don't know anything. I just keep my mouth shut.
Oh, come on, man. Bill's one of these guys where if he's got nothing nice to say, he's not going to say anything. Well, I have to say, heart on our sleeve.
I have to say, if you can run a company as big as AccuWeather, I think you're certainly qualified to run the Weather Service.
Well, but not really.
Or
not
NOAA.
Ocean Service and all the other stuff, though.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's business, so they don't get into the day-to-day forecasting or any of that stuff. So I don't know. Still seems like it's a bit of a conflict, but
he certainly is an extremely smart gentleman.
Oh, absolutely no doubt about that.
And we'll see.
I think. Hey, Steve, can you hear us? Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
Yay!
Great.
I made it on.
Everybody's here.
Gang's all here. All guys tonight. No
Where's
Kim,
Aubrey?
no Aubrey.
I've agreed to do this interview with Vice Media. I don't know if I feel good about this.
You've written? Is that the ones you've written stuff for before?
No. This is Vice News Tonight on HBO, and I think it's political in nature. And I don't know why I said yes. I don't like politics.
What's the subject going to be?
They
haven't told him yet.
No, I don't know. I mean, people have this unique interest in, they follow me on the Twitter and they want to come down here and do something. I don't know. But you know who is coming this week? I'm excited to see is Tony Rice.
Coming to Birmingham?
Yes. He is going to swing by here, I think, Wednesday evening. He's got some stuff in Huntsville going on up at, I guess, NASA at Marshall Space Flight Center. And he's going to come down and just say hi. So we'll have our astronomy man here in the building.
You want to go eat some ribs?
See, I'm on a diet, Bill. I'm trying to.
You can only have one rib.
Yeah.
You
can just watch the rest of us eat ribs there, James.
Yeah, what goes around comes around. Who was Ginger was your intern and wouldn't eat ribs and carrots or something. So you can go with us and just eat carrots.
We used to mock her for doing what I'm trying to do now, and that's why she's so healthy and vibrant, and I'm so run down. But no, I just went to Ragtime.
You look great for 36. What are you talking about?
Yeah, Brian, the place over here, Ragtime.
Yes.
If you tell them the Godspeed Special, which is the name of the place where we work out over here,
yes,
they will give you a turkey burger and a sweet potato.
Yep,
and that's on the approved list.
And I've seen you eat it along with a banned Coke Zero.
Is that banned? Is that banned from your workout, Coke Zero?
Yeah, his workout guy gets really upset when he finds out he's had a Coke Zero.
No, don't tell me they're my cigarettes. This is my 16th one today. This has been a really rough day.
Speaking of Godspeed, I met another Major League Baseball guy in there. This like
who'd you meet? Did I have his baseball?
It's just like I fanboy out down here. It's like I feel so guilty talking to these guys, but
share who is
it? The Major League baseball players are back, and they train a bunch of them down there. Kendall Graveman. Kendall is a pitcher for the Oakland A's, and
all right,
Kendall is really doing well. And
but now let me just say tonight, this is a baseball score free zone for Steve because he's a huge Astros fan and he's DVRing the game tonight, so he does not want us to tell him the score. So.
That's right, but I have seen it through the end of the second inning. That's why I was a little bit late getting on. I had to see the end of the second inning. So
okay, so Steve, we went to Minute Maid Park this year for the first time. Had a great experience.
Oh, you did?
Fantastic.
When did you come?
We came, I want to say this was back in maybe July. And it was a great experience.
I think I called it in, Ron, on our test hangout today. That's not good.
Yeah, I've got Game 6 tickets, so I'm hoping they make it here.
You have Game 6 tickets, Jim?
I do, yeah.
I went Friday night. I went to the first game.
Oh, did you? Yeah. I
went
took
to
a gamble on Game 6 getting back here. So
okay. Well, I'm hoping they don't come back.
Yeah.
Let's pull up my boring Minute Maid Park pictures if we have time. But hey, speaking of time, it is 30 minutes after the hour. Hello to those watching on television. This is James, and we're about to do WeatherBrains, and I think the gang is all here, so we're going to get this sucker started. And hey, Tom, you might want to unmute. We muted you for a second when you stepped away so that nobody in the forecast office would be saying something. Hello, Aubrey. You are here. Welcome. Good evening.
Hi, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Bill was talking bad about you.
I was not. What did I say bad about Aubrey?
You said it was an all male night.
How is that bad? It's summoned her. It's like a Pokemon. You talk about it.
Yeah,
I was finishing up with my required Facebook Live that I have to do every.
Oh my goodness! I would never say anything bad about
every.
Let's get social. With social media.
Yeah, did y'all all get the email that had my little mini notes for my rant in it about social media?
No.
I got like a WeatherBrains calendar email.
Yeah, and it had my notes in the bottom of it that were typed furiously on the plane while I was listening to a TED Talk. And I thought, and then Kevin, of course, spotted it, and he thought it was some Russian collusion or something.
Well, of course, I had my tweet today criticizing, of course, the Facebook forecast. because it.
No,
decided
wait, hang on. This is too good. Let's get this thing
Okay.
started. We want to get the good stuff in. So here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is WeatherBrains, episode number 613 for October 16th. 2017 is the weekly show that's all about weather. I'm excited about this episode tonight. Thanks for taking the time to watch and or listen. We have the lovely Aubrey Urbanowitz, who is in the place everybody wants to be this time of the year. And I saw College Game Day on ESPN
Yes.
in your town Saturday.
It was.
Wow.
It was. It was
Wow.
a big day for us. Our poor sports director could not come out and play for the afternoon, so poor guy. But yeah, it was pretty much an exciting week with game day. Second time in 3 years.
Right.
Second time in 3 years, and they won this year, so that was a good thing. And of course, the fall colors are popping out everywhere.
Wow. Yeah. Well, the crowd was stunning. I mean, it was like an ocean of humanity on the camera shots they were showing. So that was kind of like awesome.
Yeah,
But,
it was definitely awesome. And the signs were always hilarious.
Yeah. No, there were some funny ones back there.
And there was a good one that said, like, they beat X, Y, and Z and A, B, and D, so they should have beaten Alabama. So I thought that was a good sign.
And not to mention, football, that's not the only thing going on up there. The fall colors looks like they're starting to pop.
Fall colors are really popping. I decided to go up to the national park later last week, and I knew it was foggy, and I was hoping the fog layer was below 3,800 feet and that we would get kind of that fog ocean sight, and not so much. It was just foggy, and it was cold, and it was misty, but it was fun to go up again. And then so hopefully I can head out to a hike tomorrow after an event I have in the morning, and then Wednesday head back up to the national park. And the colors are popping, of course, different elevations, so they're just kind of all over the place, and it's getting to be that really nice time of the year. And other than the cooler temperatures tonight, we've actually got a really nice forecast.
Yep. And again, I'm not trying to throw sunshine on you here, but follow Aubrey on Twitter if you want some really good fall pictures from the Shenandoah Valley and the national park. Her feed is just awesome this time of the year. It's awesome all times of the year, but it's especially awesome now.
Well, I also do the fall color update once a week on Thursday. So usually I'm calling the tourism offices. I'm having them send me pictures, or I'm just searching on Twitter for different hikes in different areas and seeing if I can get, someone to post some great pictures and stuff. So it's an excursion each week. Awesome.
All right. We got Brian Peters, the internationally beloved meteorologist, longtime WCM morning coordination meteorologist for the National Weather Service. He retired and joined the dark side many years ago. Brian, how are you?
I'm doing great. Had a great time Saturday. I got to go up to Mount Cheaha, highest point in the state of Alabama, and judge the chili cook-off.
Ooh.
Yes.
That's awesome.
It was wonderful. And, it's October, so I was hoping for some color, but the color in North Alabama is somewhat muted. Just not popping out yet.
It's going to happen probably in November down here. But Bill Murray, bring in our guest. I can't wait to hear this show tonight. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, James, there's something about eating chili, though, when the dew point is 74. It just doesn't seem to work right. So now you should go this weekend instead of last weekend, Brian. But anyway, yeah, we've got a great show tonight. Does anyone know what happened on this date in 1975? And the weather panel should.
Nope.
I think I had taken a nap that day.
Does anybody want to guess what happened? You weren't even born
Eloise was in September. Hurricane Eloise.
Pretty good. You could have, if it had, well, I guess it was probably being tested at that time, but you could have looked at Eloise with this. That was launched.
What weather satellite?
Yeah, the first GOES satellite was launched on this.
Ooh, all right.
75. How cool is that?
You learn a lot on this show. See, you don't get this on all these other weather podcasts. Only on this show do you get these factoids like that.
Yeah, but they drink during the show, so you get that. You got that going for you over there. But Kim Cloco can't join us tonight because she is on a self-imposed gag order since she's on the service assessment for the subject that we're talking about tonight. So she thought it would be best for her to sit on the sidelines, or at least sit on her hands tonight for the show. So that's why she can't join us. But we are joined because and what's interesting is this is really Rick Smith's show. He came up with the idea, and I hate that he couldn't be with us tonight because he got us some outstanding guests. Tonight's first guest, WeatherBrain, is the chief engineer at the Harris County Flood Control District. He's also president of the National Hydrologic Morning Council. Steve Fitzgerald, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be with y'all, and look forward to your questions and tell y'all what happened down here in Harris County during Harvey.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to hearing all that. And of course, you were a guest suggestion of one of our listeners, and it was a last-minute thing, and we're so glad you could join us, Steve. So, and we're on a self-imposed Astros blackout tonight because from the second inning on, Steve's having to watch it by DVR. I got a bunch of Astros fans on here tonight. I'm certain, at least two for sure. So we're glad you could join us, Steve.
Thank you.
And tonight's second guest, WeatherBrains, meteorologist in charge of National Weather Service Houston and Galveston, all co-located there with the EOC and all that good stuff. Jeff, I see your house looks dry. That's a good sign.
The house stayed dry, so we'll take it.
Yeah, a lot of folks couldn't say that.
No, it's just not too far from me. We had some homes with flooding in the neighborhood here, so.
Well, we all watched that heartbreaking episode, and it was hard to watch. It was like 2005 and Katrina all over again. But we're glad you could be with us, and looking forward to hearing your part of the show tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Final guest, WeatherBrain, tonight's meteorologist in charge of the National Weather Service Corpus Christi, Mr. Tom Johnstone. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for being here. We had our first cold front come through South Texas here. So I just looked, we're in the 60s already outside. The dew point's in the upper 40s. So after months and months of 70 plus dew points, it feels great. It's good to be on the show.
Well, I was in your CWA for Hurricane Harvey. I was over in Beeville, watching over a hotel that had lost its general manager to pregnancy that week, and they had stuck her in the hospital in San Antonio. So I was over there taking advantage of all your forecast products in real time, and watching what happened, and luckily staying just out of harm's way a little bit there.
Yeah, you did.
The hurricane came on shore. We were in Greenville, South Carolina. You were in Nashville for the eclipse. Talk about, that was about the time you realized you better head back quickly to South Texas, huh?
Yeah, I actually worked the forecast desk the Sunday before Harvey. So I was responsible for the long-term forecast that included Harvey. And I ended my forecast shift and got on a plane and flew to Nashville to take in the eclipse, which was amazing. But as the eclipse ended, I checked my phone, and it was blowing up from the office. And I had to turn around and fly back to Corpus Christi to be here.
Yeah, the eclipse was something else, and so I guess you had a clear view of it the entire time. It didn't cloud over for you either. And
where we were was just beautiful, clear skies. It was great. It was really an incredible experience. I can't wait till the next one here in 2024.
Yeah, it's not that far away. That's really exciting. It really won't be far away. So I guess Harvey outperformed those early forecasts. Because it seems like it just kept. It kept being stronger than was forecast the entire time, and that intensification just was amazing. I guess we kind of all thought it might intensify like that, even faster than what the Hurricane Center was saying. What were you guys thinking there in Corpus Christi at the time, Tom?
Yeah, well, when you're staring at water temperatures in the mid to upper 80s, and reading the discussions, reading the discussions from the Hurricane Center, they were addressing that possibility of that rapid intensification. So it was, we weren't necessarily surprised by it, but it is always amazing to see. And we saw Harvey go from tropical depression to major hurricane in 36 hours. So really incredible, fast intensification of the cyclone.
So during that process, Tom, did you feel like that your end users experienced any sort of messaging lag, or do you think you were able to stay out in front of it the whole time?
There was a little, but we tried to counteract that all the time and making the point. One of the axioms we always preach when we're dealing with our core partners is to prepare for one category stronger, because we still have a ways to go in terms of accurately forecasting intensity changes. So as a fail-safe, we really stress that one category stronger. So by Thursday morning, we were telling people to prepare for a category 4, 36 hours out. So there's still time.
So Corpus Christi's experienced two of the bigger hurricanes in the last 100 years, I guess. One that had a lot to do with Bob Simpson, I think. Is that right?
Well, yeah, Dr. Simpson grew up in Corpus Christi, and it was I believe the 1919 hurricane here that he was washed out of his house. Went on to found the modern Hurricane Center and also the National Severe Storms Laboratory. All comes right here out of Corpus Christi as a result of hurricane.
And then of course Hurricane Carla in 1961, which I guess made Dan rather famous. Yeah,
it's funny, we were watching some of that footage from Dan Rather back in Carla in 1961. It was the first time that a satellite image of a hurricane had been shown on television, and I think people were struck by just the sheer size of Carla. And how much of the Gulf it took up, and that image of him is anecdotally it said that a lot of folks reacted because of seeing that image on TV.
So Jeff, I'll ask you, because you were of course nervously watching the hurricane up in Houston at the same time. What were your thoughts as it was getting ready to intensify and make its move across the Gulf?
Well, we were dealing with our forecast area goes down into Matagorda Bay. So we were still concerned for some of our counties and our constituents, so to speak, that they'd get a direct hurricane strike. So we were messaging that, but at the same time, we were beginning to see the evolutions after landfall that were a concern. So we were kind of a mixed message there. For focusing on the hurricane itself, it looked like it was going to miss Houston. But then what was going to happen over the subsequent days, trying to message that out, that kind of struggling both those challenges. There were some private companies that were bringing a Category 2 into Houston, and so we were still having to put some of those fires out as well at times early, or I guess mid to late week. But the Hurricane Center's track was pretty much right on.
And so when did it first become apparent to you that you were going to deal with a major flood event? Obviously not the disaster that you eventually dealt with, Jeff. When did it become apparent that this was going to be a big problem for Houston too?
Well, I mean, it started showing signs early in the week, Monday into Tuesday. That's when we started beefing up our scheduling and start doing some preliminary planning. But it really wasn't until we got into Wednesday, Thursday that we seriously got really concerned that this could be, another Allison, another Claudette, another record rainfall type of storm. So we got Wednesday to Thursday timeframe is when we really kind of turned the corner. And I was supposed to have that weekend off. I was actually going to be driving my son to Laramie, Wyoming. He was going to go to school there, University of Wyoming, as a freshman. So I was struggling with what I was going to do with him and our plans. And so yeah, sometime around that time frame is when it really started to show itself as this could be a problem for us.
Well, I know that by Friday we were waiting for landfall and getting ready to ride out the hurricane in Beeville, and beginning to really fear for our properties in Houston. And by noon on Friday was standing on my head trying to get hotels in Houston to take it seriously. And when you tell them it's going to rain 40 inches, they look at you like you're nuts.
Well, and that was one of the problems that we had, is that we were saying things like catastrophic flooding. We were using words like record-setting storm. But it's one thing to say it, it's another thing for people to really believe it. And so we had some emergency managers, some of the general public that really did believe it, but there were some that just didn't quite comprehend what 40 to 50 inches of rain really meant. And as we do our assessments after the storm, we're kind of figuring that out. And I'm not so sure that's an easy solution, that just one source of information. And, the National Weather Service is saying it's the official source, but, I don't know if I really buy into this. I don't know if I believe it. And the other thing that we were dealing with is that 50 inches of rain over 5 days is different than 25 inches of rain in 24 hours. And so we were trying to message that as well, that it would come in bursts, and it might be nighttime bursts. We had a lull Saturday. We had the landfall Friday. We had our first round of storms, 8 inches of rain into Houston, tornadoes, first squalls. Saturday was pretty nice around here for the most part. So a lot of people thought we dodged the bullet. And we had to keep saying, no, it's, tonight and it's coming. You got to stay tuned. We had the Mayweather fight going on that night. So a lot of people had plans to go to watch the fight and things like that. So there were some things that were a little bit working against us to try to get people to really take it seriously. We're just what that rain threat was really going to be.
So Steve, when did this event get your attention as the person charged with the responsibility of managing all the flood control assets in Harris County?
Well, I think it really started at the beginning of the week with the forecast offshore and showing the direction coming in down southwest of us, because we know that we'd be on the wet side for sure. And then when we saw the forecast that it was going, once it hit land, it could end up anywhere. That really worried me, because I had, of course, been here during Tropical Storm Allison when that wobbled all over the place in southeast Texas and hit us 3 times. People forget the first 2 times. We worked 2 floods that week, and I sent everybody home on Friday. And of course, that's when the big one hit that night. But not much we could do, because that storm was on us and over within 12 hours, and it was done. So I was having concerns about that and knew what that meant. And we all did at Harris County Flood Control and the county, and all the local emergency managers did as well. And but like y'all said, we hear the forecast. I listen to the widespread and the isolated, and we know y'all's forecasts are always correct. I mean, we say 90% of the time the forecasts are correct. We just don't know where it's going to happen in southeast Texas. But we always prepare for it to happen on us, and just in case. So I always hope it's in the Gulf. I always hope that big rain's out in the Gulf and not on land inland. And sometimes it happens that way, but not this time.
Well, Jeff, you mentioned Claudette, I think in 1979, and got a tremendous rainfall total out of it, but it was over a relatively small area, wasn't it?
That's correct. It was a small area, and it was really over the office down here and down towards Alvin. Alvin's about 10 miles from my house, and that's what set that 24-hour rainfall record at 43 inches. And a lot of people don't remember Claudette. It was 1979. This whole area has just boomed since then, population-wise. So what we ended up with was basically Claudette and Allison at the same time.
And Brian Peters, they probably remember Alicia even
yeah,
more
I
than
bet.
that.
Absolutely.
But Alicia was not as prolific a rain producer.
Right.
It moved.
So was that where the National Weather Service office was when you were there, Brian, when you got detailed down there, or has it moved since then?
It has moved since then. Actually, when I was sent down there, I ended up at the Galveston. Everything was basically centralized at the Galveston Weather Service office on Galveston Island.
So Jeff, you have an interesting arrangement with your EOC and weather office, don't you?
Absolutely. We're the only one in the nation. So that was a big kind of brainstorm with the county judge here at the time and Bill Reed, who put that together. And it certainly paid dividends in this storm, and it has in some previous storms, but really for Harvey, really paid dividends to be co-located there for many reasons.
I bet if you wanted to move, he'd say no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that does make it easier when you're right there. So talk about DSS for a minute, Tom, and then Jeff. This is becoming increasingly important for the weather services.
And a really good question is whether or not, if the NOAA administrator is confirmed, whether or not he'll let that continue.
Okay. Anybody want to weigh in on that one?
I think you said Tom first, is what I
heard. We'll go south to north, I guess. To your original question, DSS was critical, and I'm sure Jeff will echo a lot of this. Is that we were embedded here. We had meteorologists deployed to the emergency operations centers in Corpus Christi and Victoria, and we were in direct contact with all of our core partners throughout the event in the form of phone calls, briefings, one-page emails, etc. One thing that we did that was I think especially successful was text messaging. We sent on the order of 550 text messages during the event. We have a cell phone now in our operations that's purely for text message to core partners, and we're doing that on a test basis. And we were texting. We have records of all the texts. We actually were going through them the other day. The messaging we were sending to Rockport and Aransas County Emergency Management as they planned, then directed rescue operations in the eye of Hurricane Harvey. So I think the text messaging really allowed that to be successful and contributed to life saving.
Jeff, you want to finish that up?
Oh yeah, I mean, as Tom said, I mean, it's crucial. As you said, it's a bigger part of our mission, and the agency's always done decision support. It's just that it's more of a focus, and it's taken on like a different life of its own. And I think that we really realize that you just can't throw products at people and just say, well, we had something out, you should have known what to do. In our particular situation, obviously with Galveston County there, Saturday morning, we started looking at some of the high-res resolutions. Lance Wood, who was the science officer, he was on the night shift. He was the manager of the night shift. 8 a.m. Saturday morning, the HRR comes in. He's looking at possibly 20 inches of rainfall overnight in eastern Galveston County up in eastern Harris County. Takes that over to the county judge, and the emergency manager says, hey, Garrett, how many high water rescue vehicles do you have here? And he says, right now we have 2 dump trucks. And Lance can look at him and say, you're going to need more. And those are those conversations that it turns out they save lives. They literally save lives. I sent Jeff Linder just a personal text message at 8:30 Saturday night saying the show's about to start because the wall of lightning was coming. It's those small things, as Tom says, just a simple text message. It's all decision support, but it all comes through a lot of investment in time and resources into building these relationships. And so that there's that knowledge and that acknowledgement and that trust level that, hey, Jeff would not text me this if this wasn't real, those type of things. For us, we were doing the webinars that a lot of offices were doing. We're doing them 3 times a day. And then we ended up spinning up some kind of partner-specific webinars. We were doing one just for our hydro partners, starting Friday and continuing well about a week after the event, just dealing with the river flooding. And then also we are doing separate webinars for our port partners, the Port of Houston, the Coast Guard, our Marine partners. So we had quite a bit going on, and it's an investment in time. It does take personnel and staff to do that, and you have to plan for that. You just can't stumble your way into that. But I think we ended up doing somewhere around 250 webinars, conference calls, or coordination calls through Harvey. In addition to all the normal products that we issued. So it was a big event, and for us it was a marathon. It started early on, and it went 7 days. I think we were under a tropical storm watch or warning for 7 straight days. Wow. So we had to.
Is that a record for the Weather Service? Probably.
It'd be interesting for someone to look back. We were under a tornado watch for 4 straight days without a break, and I think that's a record. I can't imagine. I was at SPC for a long time, and I don't remember seeing one area being under a tornado watch for 4 straight days.
It's got to be.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
So to sort of dance around what Brian's asking, do you feel like that our emergency managers sense the importance of this enough that they could, talk to Congress and make sure that this part of the Weather Service's role is protected?
Honestly, I'm not the least bit concerned about it. I think it's so integrated and it's been so proven. It's not going anywhere. It's going to expand. However you want to dance around it, it's those relationships are there, and I think that those expectations are there. That's not something we're going to be able to pull back.
Good. Tom, you agree with that?
I know our core partners tell us every day. They were here this week telling us how important it is and how much they need it to continue.
And we have such strong support on both sides of the House, or in both sides of the political aisle. So we had Senator Cruz in the office the Saturday after Harvey, and he was talking about how great a job the National Weather Service did. So we definitely have some congressional pull there. And in the grand scheme of things, the National Weather Service is a tiny agency in the government,
right?
But it produces so much.
It's so important, and hopefully the Commerce Director sees that and understands that too.
Right.
Well, Tom, I was driving from San Antonio to Beeville that Thursday night, and I think Jeff mentioned the wall of lightning coming. That's the thing that struck me on that long, lonely drive there, across the Permian Basin. Was the unbelievable altitude that the thunderstorms reached to, and the lightning, a couple of 100 miles out in the Gulf, was just so visible and so fantastic.
On the bands, the feeder bands, and everything else.
Probably they were still at least, I don't know, 12 hours away, probably.
Yeah, I mean, for us here, it came in just steadily during the day. It was breezy Friday morning. By late Friday afternoon, we were dealing with tropical storm force winds here at the office. By Friday evening, early part of the evening, we're shutting the hurricane shutters, locking the office down, and winds gusted 60 to 65 knots for hours here at the office. So we were off the core of the strongest winds, but it was still pretty intense to live through. And living through it, it was interesting to be. We had 24 employees that lived at this office more or less for 72 hours. There was, we had the hurricane shutters down, and it was, it's a real challenge to live in a small operational weather facility. But we got through it. It was a lot of teamwork, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of humor, a lot of good food. I likened it to a spring break hotel room where you've got 12 or 13 students living in a room with 2 queen beds. If there was a dark, quiet place on a floor somewhere, there was somebody sleeping there. So that was a first for me to go through something like that. That's something I always think back on, is how many of us lived here for so long and got along so well.
Yeah, it was like meteorologists going wild, huh? On spring break.
It wasn't that. It wasn't that wild.
So I heard there was a little shop backing going on too, Tom.
Yeah, the persistent winds of 50 to 65 knots from the north, and the rainfall of 1.5 inches or so per hour. That the combined force of all that pressure at some point started pushing water up into and through the subfloor of our computer room in the back. And our electronics supervisor had just like randomly decided to lift up to make sure no water was coming in, and saw a lot of water coming in. Uh-oh. And immediately we started, trying to shot vac it out with a tiny little, maybe 2.5 horsepower shot vac that we keep here. And it was clear that it was not going to be enough to stay ahead of the volume of water that was coming in, to keep it away from all the various electronics cables and power supplies that were underneath our subfloor. So we thought quickly, and we radioed the airport security, the airport police, who we have a great relationship with. And we're like, hey, we got a water situation that's going to knock us offline if we can't get this water out from the subfloor. Do you guys have a shot vac that you can bring us? And within 5 minutes, police car in hurricane gust winds pulled up right outside our office door, offloaded a shot vac, and we were able to double team the water. We had 4 or 5 employees, meteorologists and electronics technicians, shot vac water for 7.5 hours from our subfloor, alternating with 2 shot vacs, dumping it into an external a drain that we have on the other side of the office, and just going at it. And it kept us operational all night. So those are the things you never plan for, but in hurricanes, things just go sideways.
Yeah, it literally was just crazy. So talk about, Rockport and something that really, got my attention was that Fairfield Inn that got peeled open like a sardine can. Talk about, the rescue that had to happen after that in the middle of the eye, and, and what went on there.
Rockport's devastated. I liken it to, I've done a lot of tornado surveys in my time as a WCM. And it was like a 25-mile wide EF3 tornado, low end EF3. Wind speeds consistently 140 to 150 were the peak gusts that we saw. And as a result, there was catastrophic damage, including to the Fairfield Inn. And that was one of the locations they were able to evacuate people from that failing structure in the eye over to one of the school buildings that was deemed a proper shelter there. So they had about 1.5 hours of relative calm in the eye. There in Rockport. Crazy stories. There were these mesovortices. We saw one that had winds of about 220 miles an hour just off the surface. They were rotating through that eye wall. So the eye wall was particularly dangerous in Harvey. But after that, there was some time where they could go out and do those rescue and recovery operations. And it's still unbelievable that there were no direct fatalities with the landfall, the direct impacts from the landfall with Harvey in and around Rockport.
That's amazing.
So Tom, in your opinion, should those folks have been there in that hotel with the expected arrival of the eye wall and the eye?
One of the things that we tried to message to our partners was that all of our families had evacuated and were out of the area. we support decisions. We try to provide information that can help folks make the best decision for their situation. We can't make the decision or second guess people's decision making. But we were consistently telling folks that, hey, we got all our families out of here, and you're going to be impacted very likely by a major hurricane, tomorrow, later this afternoon, whatever the time frame was.
I assume that was an evacuation area in Rockport.
Yeah, Rockport was a mandatory evacuation. Port Aransas was mandatory. Aransas Pass, all the counties on the north side of the bay were mandatory evacuations.
So you had to issue your extreme wind warning 3 different times, I understand, and that made for some policy changes somewhere along the way. Describe that.
Well, I mean, we wanted to give lead time. So the first extreme wind warning came out about an hour and a half before the 115 mile an hour that really the criteria for the extreme wind warning winds were arriving. As we waited and saw those winds increase, we realized that product was going to expire really before a lot of areas even received the extreme winds. So coordinating through the Hurricane Center and through our region, the decision was made to issue a second and eventually a third as those extreme winds spread inland and went up into Refugio and those areas. That was a pretty wide area that had 115 or greater winds.
So as a point of protocol, does that product get issued by your office or does it get issued by the Hurricane Center?
It's a local product. So we issue it the same way we issue a tornado warning, just a large polygon using our WarnGen software. And it shows up on the map just like any other polygon.
So have y'all spent some time comparing Harvey to Carla? And I guess you can safely say that it was a Category 4 hurricane.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we say every storm is different. Carla was bigger. There were a lot of similarities with Carla. Carla had much more surge. Carla is still the surge record for the state of Texas. I believe 23 feet above mean high water for Carla. With Harvey, the max we saw was about 12.5 feet. And that was just due to the fact that the strengthening occurred so quickly. There was not a time for the massive, quote unquote, wall of water to impact areas. Surge with Harvey was much more focused around Rockport on the backsides of the bays where the winds just drove the water up. Carla was a very different storm in that regard.
Well, the lack of direct fatalities in your in your county warning is just amazing, and a real testament to your hard work and preparation. So congratulations on that.
Well, thank you, but I want to give credit to the entire weather enterprise. It was our local media partners, the emergency management folks. The way that warnings are disseminated and distributed now, everything worked for that to happen. So I thank everyone for that.
Well, that's just outstanding. Now, I understand you developed a new surge scale as a result of Harvey.
I did. We're really going to go through this. So
we need some levity in the midst of all this disaster.
I was replaced at the National Weather Service office in Nashville by Chrissy Hurley. And Chrissy Hurley has done a presentation both at NWA conferences and online, the NWA webinars. That was the presentation title is Degenderizing IDSS. And one of the slides that she uses to make the point that she's wanting to make is a funny picture of me that was lifted off of Facebook. Not a flattering picture by any means. And she uses it to make the point of how much better looking she is than the guy that she replaced before. So she would go out and there were some answers say, "You're way better looking than the last WCM." And that, I'm sure that happened quite a bit. So I got her back. The Weather Service in the region sent Chrissy down to help us with storm surveys, her and the warning coordination meteorologist from the Fort Worth office, Mark Fox, and their help was invaluable. They ended up surveying a lot of Houston's area as well.
Yeah, they went for us. Yeah.
So, did a great job, allowed some of our staff to help get their homes repaired and get a day off, which was critical at that time. But there's a picture of her standing in front of a fence where the surge line is clearly right at the top of her head. So in fun, at the end of National Weather Association meeting, I created a new surge scale, the Hurley-Harvey storm surge scale. And one Hurley's about 5 foot or 5'2", depending on the fields. And we went from there. So I'll share it with you if you want to post it somewhere. It's fine. It was all in good fun. I let Chrissy know ahead of time that it was going to happen. So
yeah,
had to have a little.
That's my pick of the week there, Brian Peters. That'll be my pick. So I see the Nueces River is back in flood again right now. How long has it been in flood? I'm sure there was a break in there somewhere, Tom.
This was from rain that fell the third week of September. And the flood wave, it takes a couple of weeks for water to get from the headwater areas of the Nueces to the bay. And in this case, it just the water coming in overloaded the lake, and they had to release a little more water than they'd originally planned. So the flooding below the dam is directly related to how much water is being released, and every 100 CFS, every 100 cubic feet per second of water has a considerable increase in that river right below the dam. So that's what's going on there. It's going to be in flood for days or weeks as they continue to get this water worked out of the lake.
So I noticed Brownsville had a coastal flood statement out tonight for higher than normal tides. What's causing those tides along the South Padre in those areas?
We've had persistent easterly winds. There's been a storm in the Gulf of Mexico, a weak low that came in, and now we have the front coming through that's just driving winds now more offshore. But we've had high water along the Gulf for weeks now, and that's a seasonal thing. It's typically this is the time of highest tides along the Gulf Coast, and if you get a deep easterly flow of winds across the Gulf, it just pushes more water up. And we've had flooding, water reaching the dunes, water flooding the coastal parks for literally for weeks.
Well, Tom, I know you've come into the office and stayed late for us tonight. If you need to bug out, we're gonna kind of shift the focus over to Houston, or you can stay and sort of heckle Jeff and Steve if you'd like.
I'll look for heckle opportunities here for a little while. If you see me disappear, though, I'm gone.
So Jeff and Steve, tell me what was it like to see those kind of rainfall rates? I can't even imagine. What did they feel like when you went outside?
It literally was like standing under a waterfall. I mean, I just don't know how to explain it. It was incomprehensible, the rainfall rates, at least down here. It was just, coming in buckets, so they say. But it just wouldn't let up, and my phone's blowing up with people like, well, when's it going to stop? When's it going to stop? This water's getting close to my house, and you're just kind of shaking your head like it's not going to stop yet. It's not going to stop. There's no break coming yet. So, knowing it was a marathon, I kind of made myself go to bed Saturday night around 10 o'clock, and 12:30, my daughter wakes me up. She's 16, and she says, Dad, you got to come see this rain. It's scary out here. And I can't believe as soon as she woke me up, you could just hear the roar. And you mentioned the lightning. There was just tons of lightning with this activity. So it was, it was just incomprehensible. It literally was like standing under a waterfall and just looking at it, just pouring right down outside your house.
Yeah, Steve, I know you got some cool slides we can walk through together, and you and Jeff can kind of comment from the hydrology side, from the meteorology side, on some of the things you got there. So if you want to screen share those, we'll be thrilled to kind of look at those with you. We'll have to remember that a lot of our audience listens to the show, so we'll kind of describe what we're seeing.
Okay.
For those guys. But
let me get them up here, or try to. I'm trying to those three dots you told me about, I don't see on my screen now.
Yeah, I think you have the different look on this Hangout Live. So look to the left, and you'll see that same little green arrow screen there.
The green, okay, I see it.
It should work just like what you're used to.
Okay.
It's funny how a live Hangout looks different from the normal Hangout that we do to test. So that Google throws us off that way. So we can just walk quickly through some of these and pick up on some of the more important points. Yeah,
Can you see them now?
Everybody else see them okay?
Yep.
Can y'all see them okay? Okay, I wasn't sure. Okay, I'm going to try to get it so I can see y'all still a little bit.
So how long have you had this job, Steve?
I've been in Harris County flood control for 35 years.
Wow.
And I've worked floods since 1981 when I came. And I was the Flood Watch leader, is what we called our group, was Flood Watch 30 years ago, pretty much the whole time. And I've really appreciated all the assistance with the meteorologists down in Galveston or League City, and all the hurricane forecasters in Miami. Just y'all are invaluable. And I was really not shocked. I was pleasantly surprised how accurate the forecast was for Harvey. Even, 4 days out, 3 days out, the track, the amount of rain and everything was absolutely incredible. So I can tell that the people and the science is getting better and better as we get better folks, better models, more data, all that kind of stuff, I guess. So that's much appreciated. I know the residents of Harris County appreciate it a lot. Yeah, you mentioned the intensity of the rainfall. I never got to go outside during the heavy rain events. I was inside in our flood alert room at our office, and we support the Harris County Office of Emergency Management, or TranStar, which is where Jeff Linder goes, and several of our other people go down there during an event. And so we're providing information and doing the work at our office to provide them what's happening with our channels and bayous and that kind of information. And also the feedback we're getting from the citizens about what's happening. So that's what we do. And but this one happened pretty fast, and we forecasted almost all the channels out that Saturday night. I guess the northwest part of Harris County came in later, maybe more on Sunday, because they didn't get their big rain until the next day.
So do you have a slide, Steve, that sort of shows those channels and what the important pieces and parts are of the puzzle that you have to manage?
I'm just going to step through this, if that's okay. I can get it.
It was sort of fascinating to watch local news from Houston, during the flood event on Sunday and Monday, and kind of learn what they were, what the issues were.
Right. Yeah, and y'all see the slide now. H is really I put it there for Houston, but I guess it could be Harvey, except the track is Harvey on this slide.
It certainly doesn't mean high pressure in this situation.
No, it doesn't mean high pressure. I put it for Houston, and I realized that meant a lot of different things. And one interesting thing was that while we were in the storm, it really, like y'all mentioned, Saturday night after dark, maybe 8 or 9 o'clock is when that rain band set up on us and just wouldn't move for several hours. And for about the next 3 days until Monday, I never really knew where the low pressure was because we were so focused on Harris County and had the radar just on Harris County. And like Jeff said, it never really stopped raining. It rained hard somewhere pretty much the whole time. And so it was pretty amazing. And that Saturday night when it was raining so hard, there were so many people calling us, residents, because they couldn't get through 911 mainly on I-45, probably all the way down there to League City where you were, Jeff, because that's where the heaviest rain was occurring for many hours. And people were scared. They thought they were going to drown. They're in their cars or in their homes or in their apartments or on top of their roofs. Some people called on top of their roofs, even on Saturday night. So it was very scary for our staff and everyone calling in because they didn't. Most of our staff had never taken calls like that before. So it was very, very frightening for everyone that night.
Yeah, when we walked over to Galveston County at one point Saturday night, early Sunday morning, that you could tell it was physically bothering people to get calls, and they knew they couldn't help them.
No, they couldn't. They felt desperate. I mean, our staff was just. I mean, their emotions were really ragged. And I told them, I kind of stopped everybody. I said, guys, this is a lot like Allison in 2001, where we got 27 inches of rain in 9 hours at 2 of our gauges. And I told them people were going to die tonight, and hopefully not in their homes or their businesses, because we tell people to stay where they are. The safest thing is to stay. Don't try to walk or drive anywhere, just to go vertical in your home or apartment or house, whatever it is, to get out of the water. So anyway, and here's a slide. This is one that Jeff Linder put together. I stole from him. It was about the forecast. I don't know exactly what. Oh, this was on the 26th at 5 a.m.
So that would have been Saturday morning, right?
Yes, Saturday morning. And so here was the forecast of 25 to 40 inches in our area. And of course, this forecast was really starting several days before that. I remember the 25 to 30 inches. And with that wobble or the unknown where the center was going for several days, we knew that was very, very possible.
Yeah, on Thursday we were starting to brief. I know I was on county calls saying we need to stop talking inches and start talking feet of rain.
Yeah, that's great.
And it's really verified. That's what's the amazing thing.
I know, it's incredible.
And Jeff, putting things like that in layman's terms, just plain language, is so important to all of us. We may know what you're talking about, but a lot of the folks that are on the call, that really helps make the point, just how you say it. makes a huge difference. And that
Well,
made
do
a
you
big
feel like
difference.
people listened on Saturday night as the event was sort of getting ramped
They
up?
did. And here's the rain band starting at 9 p.m. I-45 is right here, and I think your office, Jeff's, right about there. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not. Yeah. So this is where the rain bites first started coming into Harris County from the west.
And that looks a lot like the HRRR from that morning, if I remember correctly.
It did very well.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think it helped our messaging, and I do think it also saved lives.
It definitely did.
We were for the first time taking a high res model run and using it as one of our briefing slides, just to say, this isn't exact, but this is what we're thinking. This is what the atmosphere is capable of. And, it's showing 15, 20 inches of rain overnight.
And the TV meteorologist and our judge, Ed Emmett, and all the folks that are on television that Saturday, when you said the weather looked kind of nice, didn't look like it was too bad. They're saying, guys, it's coming tonight. Do not start going out tonight, because they had already told the emergency managers and the media and the elected officials on Thursday were saying, cancel your plans this weekend. Stay home. All that was coming out. And I'm positive most 99% of the people took that into account for their weekend.
Yeah, we had one city, and I don't want to say it because I don't want to embarrass anybody, but one city using our forecast for Saturday night issued a mandatory, what do you call it? Where everyone has to stay home, mandatory curfew, starting at 10 o'clock. But there was a significant amount of pushback for the community, so they rolled that back to 1 a.m. and ended up pulling people out of their cars all evening long.
Yeah, that happened. And here, so that was that. And here's we did. This is kind of going through the rainfall during the event itself, just in Harris County. And here's was the range from about 14 to 24 inches in Harris County. That's a weighted average. That's not the peak amount. And here was our frequencies. The green is 100 to 500 year, and the dark orange is 1,000 to 2,000 year. And you can see it's concentrated in the along I-45, south of downtown, and then over in the Cedar Bayou, Goose Creek area over in the east side. And this is amazing to have this much, over 100 to 500 year or 100 year or higher over the entire county. And Allison, in 2001, we had 100 year over about maybe a half to 2/3 of our county, and that was it. I mean, we thought that was a huge area, but this was just unthinkable that this would ever happen. And then here's our 4-day amounts. And y'all are statisticians better than I am. And when you extrapolate above a 500 year or 1,000 year event, you're really extrapolating a lot. So there's a lot of error in this. But this was the best job we could do. And so our 4-day totals, we're really saying from a flood standpoint, this was a 4-day event, primarily on most all of our channels. And that was in the 28 to 44 inches range. And our highest was down here on around I-45 or Mary's Creek. I can't remember which one, which it was 48.7 inches, I think, over those 4 days. And the dark purple is 20,000 year or higher down along in the southeast part of the county. But everything was 2,000 year and higher around the whole county over those 4 days.
So anyone who bought flood insurance based on the 100-year floodplain just was totally toast, huh?
Yeah. Well, we have for 30 years told everyone in Harris County to buy flood insurance because we could get 25 to 30 inches of rain anytime. Because we know what our PMP is, and we know what's happened in the past with Claudette and others. But most people don't believe us. So,
this was the fourth big urban flood for Houston since May of 2015, and every one of them, the majority of flooded homes were outside the 100-year floodplain.
That's correct. And along some of our urban channels that are really efficient, that are very efficient and have close to 1% capacity, they did pretty well, even in Harvey. Not that homes still flooded, but not as bad as other ones. But because of our topography and older parts of town with older criteria, internal drainage systems, and some of the homes are lower in the older parts of town, especially, they are a lot more susceptible to flooding. And this is true actually around the country. the older parts of cities are more susceptible to flooding. Because, about in the 80s is when our criteria started changing. This is around the country, not just in Harris County. And we started improving it from about 80s on. And one reason was the National Flood Insurance Program that came in existence at the end of the 1970s. It kind of brought that to a forefront. And we just started kind of adapting to that in the 80s and early and 90s as well. So anything built later on did a lot better. But in Harvey, even those homes in the 500-year, or even 2 or 3 feet above the 500-year along Cypress Creek and others, there was still a lot of flooding way above the 500-year in this event.
You're just not going to out-engineer 7 inches an hour.
No, not at all, not at all. So our recommendation is what I tell people: when you're building a office or a home, build it as high as you can. That's practicable and economical. Just build it as high as you can. So don't pay attention to floodplains. Don't pay attention to that. Just build it as high as you can.
So what's happening in all these areas that flooded? Or will the rebuilding just occur there? Will there be some mitigation and buyouts and things like that, or what will happen?
We're working. We tell people we're not going to design for Harvey because that's not going to be economical. No one will want to pay for all that. But we do want to go into those areas that flood more frequently and complete projects that have been started, federal projects, local projects. We have couple of thousand people that have been on our volunteer buyout list from all the storms since the 1990s. Whenever there's a slug of money, either local and or federal through FEMA, then we buy as many homes as we can. But there's a big backlog, and every one of those homes flooded this time that had flooded before. So all those things we want to do. And we also want the public to understand that they need to take some responsibility, make good decisions, buy flood insurance, live in homes that are as high as they can be, and make decisions like stay at your house or stay at home or stay at your office when it starts raining hard. Because people put themselves and their loved ones at risk when they're driving or walking during an event. As long as I call it freshwater flooding. When it's saltwater flooding or storm surge, you're ordered to evacuate, get out of there, because we know what that does. That's life or death along the coast with the storm surge and the waves. But for freshwater flooding, get somewhere safe and just be ready to go vertical if you have to.
Yeah, over the last year, we've been working, National Weather Service, local media, emergency management, some state officials. We had a couple of the flash flood messaging team, and that's one of the things that we're preaching when we get in these emergencies is to stay put, stay home, stay dry, type of message. And this is the first one of the 4 that we've had that we did lose some folks in their homes, but we would have lost so many more had they been on the road. Still the majority of our fatalities around the Houston Metro is still people driving or out in the water.
So would any sort of evacuation been practical in advance to the heavy rainfall?
I don't think so, because first of all, I don't know when you could have pulled the trigger on that, and secondly, I don't know where they would have gone.
We don't evacuate for riverine flooding or what I call freshwater flooding. We don't know. Typically, we don't know where it's going to happen. Of course, right. This was a larger event. This was a very unusual event. So we don't know where it's going to happen until it starts raining in Harris County, because we don't really know. And here's the map. We put together the location of the storm, just the location where people passed away on the 36. And I just skipped to it. It's further down in the slideshow since we're talking about it. And that's a picture of the van where the the grandparents and the 4 grandkids, sometime during the flood, they made a decision they needed to move or do something, and they drowned in that van. But there was 5 people that were found in their homes or businesses, and that was all out of 36. So the rest of them were found outside somewhere. So they were not in their homes. They fled or tried to move or go somewhere, or got caught in the flood.
And that's what we were dealing with the other counties surrounding Harris as well.
Yeah.
And Tom, don't forget you're deputized as a panelist here, so I haven't heard enough heckling out of you yet.
I had muted myself.
I'm sure you have some excellent questions or thoughts you can throw in here too, so please feel free to. That's why we've ask you to hang around tonight, so please do that. But Jeff, y'all had some 60-inch amounts reportedly, right? And
Right.
those are going to be all-time U.S. records if they verify.
That's correct, and I don't want to leave Beaumont and Port Arthur out of this, because really Monday to Tuesday is when they really got it, and so they were dealing with what Houston was dealing with, same type of scale. So over there around Beaumont, there were some gauges that measured 60 inches. We had some 60 inches around here in Galveston County. We're still trying to verify it. We have a lot of backyard gauges, so whether or not you deputize that as an official reading or not, that's kind of where we're at on some of these. But we had several 55 to 60 inch readings around Galveston County. So we're talking 5 feet of rain over about 5 days.
Yeah, and here's the record flood levels on our channels that occurred. I'm just showing that right now. I got some pictures if y'all want to see some pictures.
We generally frown on vacation slides, but it's kind of a
no vacation for these people.
This is definitely not a vacation here.
No, this was Jeff down close to y'all. That red arrow on there is I-45 at Clear Creek, and that's where the highest 1 hour rainfall occurred on our gauge system. 6.8 inches was right there.
That's just a couple miles from my house, a couple miles from the office.
Yep. And then the one thing that was, the homes were flooding was awful, because we think, I'll have this number here in a minute, between 100 and 150,000 homes still counting and trying to figure that out. But just the gridlock, not only during this event, but after the event, trying to get around Harris County and Houston. So it took a long time for the water to get down. And then, even the next week after the week of Harvey, happened the weekend and that whole week, people didn't really come out till like Wednesday. I think the sun came out on Wednesday, if I'm right. And then no one could go to work. Schools were shut down. Most work was shut down. So people were helping their neighbors and friends trying to recover from the homes that got flooded. There's so many of them. So then the week after, the releases were coming out of Addicks and Barker Reservoir and had every north-south road from Highway 6 down to near downtown underwater. So it was gridlocked the next week as well. People trying to get to work. So 30 minutes is taking 2.5 hours to even try to go anywhere. So
for us, from really Sunday morning until Wednesday, for a lot of us where we live here in Western League City, there was only one route that was open to get to the office. You had to kind of wind your way around and still go through a little bit of high water just to get into the office. So we just about got isolated at the office.
Yeah. It's just I'm just going to show you all some not random, just around Harris County. Here's some, and it's some of the less affluent areas of Harris County. And then we have the San Jacinto River, and record levels and on San Jacinto River, and record flows over that's the Lake Houston Dam there, and that's the Kingwood High School that's still closed. I think it's going to be closed all year. That was surrounded by water. I took these pictures. Anything from the air I took. I got to go up I went over to, we were going to try to get up on Monday, but it was still raining too hard. I was going with the Sheriff's Department's helicopter, them and their helicopters, but we went up Tuesday and Wednesday. So that's the longest I've ever flown, is 2 days in a row, almost both days full time, the whole time. But we wanted to try to get as much document as we could while the water was still up. And here's the famous Addicks and Barker reservoirs that everybody wants to talk about, no matter where you go. So no one wanted to talk about them before now, but now everybody wants to talk about them.
And explain why that discussion is so prescient right now.
Because because of the rainfall amounts, they were built back in World War II, and the highest they'd gotten was last year at tax day, was the record flood, which was about 6 or 7 feet lower than they got this time. And so they got very full this time, and for the first time, flooded homes upstream, because the pools of the reservoirs are extended beyond what the government owned, what the Corps of Engineers owned. And there were several thousand homes are in the pool upstream, and several thousand of those flooded. And then while the water was coming in on Sunday night, it kept raining up in the northwest and just wouldn't stop. and the Corps got real concerned about water, a large amount of water going around the ends. The spillways are around the ends of each dam. There's two on each reservoir, and they're around the ends, not over in the middle somewhere. They were concerned about the uncontrolled flows around, and then about it coming up so high it could cause an issue with the dams themselves and have a breach, which they sure didn't want to have. So they opened the gates and released a record amount of flow downstream, which increased water levels downstream.
And people just don't really understand the decisions that have to be made, the purpose of the dams while they're there. What their mandate from Congress is. They're there to protect downtown, and when they get full, the people on the pool side want them released. The people downstream want them to stop releasing. It's a bit of a lose-lose situation for the Corps when you have homes on both sides of the dam. Yep,
it is, and there's a lot of lawsuits. That's about all we can say about is what happened, and it was a terrible thing for everybody. But this really took a lot of our attention. Probably you too, Jeff. But this, we didn't get to talk or acknowledge the flooding going on in Clear Creek, Cedar Bayou, Hunting, Halls, the rest of the camp. We're having record floods, and tens of thousands of people fled on other watersheds, but we really couldn't focus on them as much as we'd like to.
All but one of the river stem, the large scale water systems that we do hydro forecasting on, all but one of them set records with Harvey.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that. Yeah. I didn't realize that. Wow.
It's incredible.
That is incredible. Here's some homes upstream that flooded, and this is upstream of Addicks Reservoir. And there's a home and the debris outside of their homes. And here's some homes on Buffalo Bayou. I always like to go out and meet people and get information from them. I'm sure some of y'all do that too, maybe in the Weather Service. But I could learn how the water flows and where it came from and understand it better. And this one had a lot to understand itself. But that house up on the right-hand corner is the man standing in the house on the left-hand corner. Of course, he had to take everything out except the studs up to the ceiling. And they're still trying to figure out what to do. I mean, this is the biggest decision of what do you do now? There's 100 to 150,000 families trying to figure out what to do now. So it's pretty rough. Mm. And here's some of the initial numbers I've been talking about. Y'all talked about how heavy it was raining, and I talked to my wife when I guess on the phone, maybe when I got home. I was at the office for 7 days. So I took enough clothes for 4 days. And after 5 days, it was smelling really bad. And I was almost wearing the same clothes over and over. And on Wednesday, when we were flying, I was flying with the sheriffs. They had to get back to their hangar to get a video to their captain. And we were flying back. I'm thinking, I only live 5 minutes from there. I'm going to call my wife. So I called her from the helicopter and asked her to bring me some clothes. That wasn't sure how much longer I was going to be at the office. So she drove out there to Hooks Airport and down next to the runway, all the way down to the hangar. I was proud of her. And she brought me a bag of clothes. So, and then when I got back to Transtar, I said, I got some clothes. And they said, oh, that's great. They said, did you know they have showers here? I go, no. So I got to take a shower that night too. So that was a great day. You're
lucky they didn't knock you in the head and take your fresh clothes from you.
I know. Well, they'd been staying there and they've been taking showers. I didn't know their shower. I was going back between our office and the Transtar, which is about a mile apart.
They're like, somebody, please tell Steve we've got a shower.
I think that's why they were telling me when I got back.
So you got lots of big numbers on there. What kind of estimate damages? We're talking 80 to 190 billion.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from. We don't come up with that. Other people come up with those. But I think more about the number of families that flooded. In Allison, we had 73,000, and we expect about twice as many for that. And this is just Harris County. So you just Harris County, Montgomery County, Galveston County, Fort Bend County, Liberty County, then all the way to Orange County.
Is that where Beaumont is, Jeff?
Right,
in Orange County.
Yes, exactly. And then you throw in the closure of the ports, huge economic impact. Everyone saw the gas prices going up because these refineries were having to either shut down or scale back their operations because the freshwater flows out into the port out of these rivers was just too high to safely navigate, and that went on for weeks. So it wasn't necessarily infrastructure damage, but it was just the river flows were just too high.
And some of the refineries, they talked about how they weren't damaged very much, but their employees couldn't get there, or they were so many employees were flooded that they couldn't come to work. They couldn't get the people there to work as well. So
Yeah,
that was a big issue. And there's always blessings in every event. I mean, there always is. And you clutch onto those and hang on to those as much as you can. And Harris County, we were just glad it wasn't a wind event here, because without electricity and all the wind damage, and if we had storms, it would have been 10 times worse for everyone. If we had wind. And
the nightmare scenario for the city of Houston is what Harvey did to Rockport, which is a rapid developer. You're messaging a tropical depression, perhaps a forecast to be a Cat 2 hurricane. How many people are going to leave? By the time it hit that Cat 4, we were past our evacuation times in most of the populated areas there around Galveston Bay, which would have been just a disaster.
Good point, Jeff. That's good.
And Jeff, how do you message tornado warnings when people are on the roof?
It's difficult. We really struggled with what to do. You know, we issue hazard-specific warnings, tornado warnings, but at one point we're looking around going, we've got people on their roofs. You know, what do we expect people to do? And that's something that we struggled with and trying to figure out how to handle that. And then in general, when do you get to the point where you have almost warning fatigue from the public standpoint? You know, was that an issue? And that's something that we're just going to have to kind of vet out over time and see, you know, if what we did was the best we could do or if we could do better. It's a tough one. Go ahead.
Jeff, you go ahead.
I was going to say we issued more tornado warnings in 4 days than we had in the previous 5 years combined.
Oh my God!
Wow, my gosh!
Wow.
And so Jeff, in that whole process, Mr. Rogers, you know, he spoke on bad things. He said when bad things happen, you look for the good people, and we saw lots of good people, you know, during the event on, you know, especially Monday and Tuesday. And it was almost like the miracle on the Hudson. You know, times couldn't get any worse. Now you got a plane going down in New York City in the Hudson River, but you know, then the heroism comes to the forefront. So it seemed like that was kind of a turning point to me to make this at least not as terrible as it could have been.
Yeah, you know, the volunteers that use the term flooded, that flooded in here, that rushed in here with their boats. You know, they're unheralded. They're all over the city. People who just grabbed a boat and ran somewhere and put it in and started saving people. And some of our fatalities were from Good Samaritan trying to help people. So it did come at a cost, but there's no doubt that, you know, the first responders were amazing throughout this entire event. We had first responders staged at the EOC, which is our office as well. You know, these are just brave men and women that were just going out and risking their lives and pulling people off for days and days. And then they, you know, the Cajun Navy, I guess they call it, you know, they came in and just did an amazing job. And then all the way over towards Beaumont. You hear people, they don't even know who they saved, how many they saved. It got to the point where emergency management couldn't even count how many people they were pulling out or who were being pulled out or where they were going. They were just getting to high ground. Just get me out of my house, get me to dry ground.
Yeah. And it was interesting because being in the flood control district, you know, we had some TVs on, but we didn't really watch them. So I really wasn't sure that, I didn't know all that was really going on pretty much for a couple of days. But once we saw it, we thought that was great. I didn't know Judge Emmett had called for people to come and help. I didn't really realize that till a couple of weeks later. So I'm glad that he had the resolve to say, I don't care what the legal ramifications are. I'm going to call it. Everybody come and help us that you can help. If you've got a boat, come help. So that takes a lot of guts. It's a lot of gut for an elected official to say that. So
yeah,
that's for sure.
So Jeff and Steve, you know, the new stuff in the Weather Service, the National Water Center, the water model, OWP, all these things, you know, did they help in this process? And, you know, or were they trying to catch up as it evolved?
It's a tough thing. I think the next big concern or a big area that for us to improve on, and the National Water Center perhaps could take the lead on, is really inundation mapping. That's one thing that we don't produce a lot as an agency, and so a lot of people were grabbing GIS experts and saying, hey, this water, this gauge level at this river, what's that going to flood? And they were just trying to map it out that was a hard thing for us to kind of manage, putting out some fires on maps that we hadn't seen or that we weren't aware of. But I think that's an area that the Water Center really could perhaps take a role in or lead in going forward. That would be a big help that we don't have right now.
Yeah, we'd had some beta versions of that we were working with for this event, but and we didn't release those, I don't think, because they were still beta and they were pretty rough. But we were trying to produce some inundation mapping from Addix and Barker as that unfolded. That was a little bit slower toward the end of the storm, and we got pretty good at it after a while. But we were doing that on the fly because we were trying to warn people that whether the water is going to be rising into their homes or not. And so we were getting thousands of calls. People would just call us and say, "Hey, do I need to leave? Am I going to get flooded or not? Upstream of the reservoirs, downstream of the reservoirs."
So, Stephen, the slide you have up on your screen right now, you mentioned the West Gulf River Forecast Center and how crucial it was. Talk about how important that was to you in your role.
Primarily for the rivers, and they have some points in Harris County, and that's very helpful with us as well. But we have our forecasting methods too, so that coordination is real important. But so that they're, those guys are really, really important. It's always good to compare notes. It's always good when you're forecasting to compare notes with someone using a model different than yours, and that's always very helpful.
Yeah,
so
the River Forecast Center was definitely huge, a big help. As was, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I know for the major rivers, because we only have San Jacinto River that comes through our area, but I know they're really important for all the rivers around us and that Jeff works with.
Right, with the Trinity, the San Jacinto. I mean, they were huge in all the rivers, and they did an amazing job, a knockout job. At other agencies, the Weather Prediction Center, WPC, with their kind of broader scale QPF precipitation forecasting, they were highly accurate and very, very helpful to us. And don't want to overlook the Hurricane Center. As I said, their track was really good. We were dealing with one thing we didn't get into was the storm surge watches and warnings. That's kind of a new product, and we were dealing with that. And I know, Tom, you probably have more to say on that, how that worked out down there.
Yeah, you already mentioned about communications earlier, and I don't do this, but Jeff Linder, he's on with all you guys. But he loves the Weather Service blog, and this is just an excerpt from a blog.
The NWS chat. Yes.
Yeah, I mean chat. I mean not blog. That's right, chat. I'm sorry. Yeah, chat. NWS chat. And he says that's just invaluable. And I think that started a few years ago. I'm not sure exactly when it started, but I always say these young folks really like that. So us older guys, I don't know if we're as good at it as they are. So, but anyway.
So Tom, the comment there was about the accuracy of the Hurricane Center track, and if you looked at the forecast track on like Friday afternoon, you look at it and you probably thought they lost their mind in Miami, but it turns out that the actual track looks a lot like what that forecast was, with it pulling in and then backing right back out.
And they did an amazing job, and our media partners are still singing the praises of the extreme wind warning and the storm surge warnings. Those were the first time they'd seen those, but we'd spent a lot of efforts over the last 1 to 2 years educating all of our partners about what those products mean and when we're going to issue them. And they made a difference. It really it added that level of intensity and urgency to the whole messaging.
So talk about the storm surge products, since they're relatively new for people that are just getting used to them.
Yeah, the coordinating through the local office, we can now issue a storm surge warning when life-threatening storm surge is expected, which is defined as around 3 feet above normally dry ground. So it's an EAS product. It triggers a lot of other alerting systems, and it's a complement to the probabilistic storm surge information we're already distributing to our core partners in terms of inundation maps and those kind of things. So it's really it's time to act. If you haven't acted yet, when that warning comes out, that's the trigger. So it was, like I said, the media really responded to that, and it was a component to all the life saving that happened.
Now, I've seen like the slosh model available only, with some sort of vetting, So can anybody access that data, or do you have to be an emergency manager or a governmental official, or is that something that broadcasters and other meteorologists can get their hands on?
Yeah, they can. I mean, slosh is more for early and for general planning purposes or earlier on. We're looking at P-Surge, which is a Hurricane Center product. And what we're looking at is kind of a reasonable worst case projection, depending on a whole host of different tracks and intensities, what the storm surge could look like in a worst case scenario. So that's certainly an important part of what we provide to our partners.
And that inundation map that they produce is available to the general public as that comes out.
And it's generally a 10% exceedance, which I guess you would say is the worst case, but the worst case happens. Yeah,
it does. Yes.
And we see so many times that reasonable worst case can happen, does happen, and you don't want to be there when it does.
No.
Surge is such a difficult thing to message because even 3 hours out before Harvey's landfall, where that center makes landfall, the angle that it makes landfall is critical to the surge that individuals are going to receive depending on where they live. If that storm had tracked 10 miles further south, it's a completely different kind of surge event for Rockport in those areas. In this case, it was a mainly back bay event because the storm came right in, so they had mostly strong northerly winds. That storm tracks a little south, it's a strong southeasterly wind, and it's a whole different kind of surge. So we have to capture all those eventualities in one kind of worst case scenario that we can then message to our core partners what all the possibilities are. But to provide one map of what the surge is going to look like is extremely complicated and very difficult to message.
And that surge warning, you mentioned Carla before. Carla was a big storm. That's where that product would really show its merit because before Ike, Carla was the surge of record up in the Galveston Bay, 6 to 10 feet. We didn't deal with hurricane force winds up here, but we dealt with a storm surge. So we could actually have a storm surge warning out well removed from the center off to the right. And I think that's when we have another storm like that, that's where that product's really going to show its merit.
So Jeff and Tom, do you feel like people are starting to focus less on the skinny black line since, that's been the message for a long time?
I think that the skinny black line, yes. But we have a long way to go messaging the cone. And I think that probably could do a whole episode on that. But the service assessments that come out from the Weather Service, the last few, the cone continuously comes up as something that the public still has some understanding issues. We spend all year, Jeff's office, my office, we're out educating the public, educating core partners year round on the cone, what it means. But still, we have to reinforce that message throughout the event that it's not an impacts cone. There's a chance the storm center could track outside the cone.
Right.
Impacts are going to extend well away from the center of the storm. So yeah, it's problematic, but it's right now it's still the gold standard.
Well, we found in this event in Irma, that probably we in the media are not helping things by showing, direct model output in an attempt to show different scenarios. I know our emergency managers have a product called Hurrivac, and you can run different scenarios on that based on the, the west and the left and the right sides of the cone. Talk about that for a moment. What can we do as, that kind of final mile in some cases to the general public in order to help message. I seized on that during these recent hurricanes, that Hurrivac product, because it really shows you, if the storm is on the west side of the cone, this is what's going to happen. If the storm is on the east side of the cone, this is what the impacts could be.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of different tools of doing that. It's just a difficult thing to get people to understand how big a difference 30 miles makes on landfall with a hurricane. But you don't want to over uncertainty it either, where people feel like, well, it's probably going to miss me, then I'm going to take my chances. So you have to speak definitively to try to motivate people to take action, but you have to be careful with how you do that because we know the uncertainty that's going in and the sensitivity of it. Off just a short deviation in track.
Hey guys, I got to hop in here real quick, Bill Murray. This great discussion. I don't want it to stop, but I've got to go do some television, so I've got to roll a couple of pre-recorded segments. We got Professor Peters and Tony Rice, and we'll be right back and pick this up as Weather Brains rolls along. Stay with us.
Brains 101 with Professor Peters.
One of the high points in my career as a meteorologist was the opportunity.
I think I'm going to head out, guys.
Look at the folks who fly into hurricanes instead of away from them. The primary mission of the 53rd Weather Reconnaissance Squadron is to conduct tropical storm reconnaissance. The 53rd Weather Reconnaissance Squadron is organizationally under the 403rd Reserve Wing located at Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi. Although the airplanes and people are Department of Defense assets, the unit's primary tasking command is the Department of Commerce. Although an unusual setup, it has worked well for many years. Tropical reconnaissance is governed by the National Hurricane Operations Plan. This plan specifies that the 53rd Weather Reconnaissance Squadron will support 24-hour-a-day continuous operations and have the ability to fly up to 3 storms at a time with a response time of 16 hours. While 3 storms a day seems a little unlikely, the area of responsibility is not just the Caribbean and the Atlantic, but actually extends from the mid-Atlantic, about 55 west longitude, to the international dateline in the Pacific. Since the 53rd Weather Reconnaissance Squadron is tasked to fly up to 3 storms twice a day, there is a necessity for 10 full-time air crews and 10 part-time air crews. Many of the part-timers are part of the civilian workforce and hold a wide array of jobs, including airline pilots, school teachers, realtors, and just about anything you can name. They come to the base a couple of times every month to train and will fly recon missions when available. The 53rd Weather Reconnaissance flies the WC-130J with a 5-person crew, including a pilot, co-pilot, navigator, aerial reconnaissance weather officer, and a weather loadmaster. When a storm is beginning to form, the National Hurricane Center will send the 53rd Weather Reconnaissance Squadron to investigate whether the wind is blowing in a counterclockwise rotation, indicating a closed system. The mission is flown from 500 to 1,500 feet above the ocean surface. The aerial reconnaissance weather officer will constantly monitor the ocean waves in order to determine the wind speed and direction from the sea state. The low-level wind and pressure fields provide an accurate snapshot for the Hurricane Center forecasters. Once it is determined that there is a circulation within the disturbance, the mission will transform into a fix mission. Next week, we'll follow up with more information on the activities surrounding a Hurricane Hunter mission. If you have a question about the weather, drop an email to question@weatherbrains.com.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your Astronomy Outlook.
Talk to any astronomy teacher, either at the high school or even collegiate level, and they'll tell you, teaching a 3-dimensional subject like astronomy can be a bit of a challenge. With many of the topics, some people get it and some just don't. These same teachers will also tell you, all the software simulations in the world, all the full color imagery online or elsewhere just can't beat getting out there and observing. That's where the I get it now moments are made. On Thursday, October 19th, the planet Uranus reaches opposition. That's the position in its and Earth's orbit where the planet is opposite of the sun. The order goes Uranus, Earth, and then the sun. You can use this as an opportunity to catch a rare glimpse of this outer planet this week. In very, very dark locations, you might even be able to spot Uranus with the naked eye. Elsewhere, a good set of binoculars will help. Look to the east-southeast for a V formed by the constellation Pisces. Uranus is just up and to the right, slightly brighter star Omicron Piscium. That's the first star on the bottom left side in that V. And this is where your aha moment might come. Uranus rises at sunset and sets at sunrise, local time during opposition. Now think of another heavenly body that rises at sunset and sets at sunrise. The full moon. The orientation of the body, Earth, and sun are the same here. Physics works the same on Earth, the moon, or Uranus. Now stop that giggling. That's how you pronounce it. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
Tony Rice knows us all too well. I always feel a little smarter after Tony and Brian do their part, but Brian, I had to giggle too while he was naming that planet there that we shall remain unnamed here on the show. So,
that isn't the way I pronounced it in school, but
I was going to say, I think all the sixth graders pronounced it a different way. I think probably, but so Brian, I've sort of talked too much here tonight. I know you probably got a couple of great questions to ask Jeff and Steve since they've been so gracious to hang out with us.
No, I was curious, Jeff, about whether your office had any issues, like Tom mentioned, the water coming into the subfloor.
No, we didn't have any facility issues, fortunately. I mean, again, but we're in a hardened facility there with the Galveston County EOC. So our biggest problems were really, again, the duration of it. As we kept saying, we're running a marathon, not a sprint when it comes to Harvey. It's, we're going 5, 6, 7 days. And then we just had quite a few people who couldn't get home.
Right.
So they were literally stuck at the office. And
were you guys operating like 12-hour shifts?
Right. We went to 12-hour shifts starting Thursday night and Friday morning, and we didn't pull out of them until Wednesday at 8 p.m. the following Wednesday.
Yeah.
So, and we had, all hands on deck. So I think our lowest staff numbers were maybe 6 or 7 on. So we had 6 or 7 on a night shift, and we had, approximately 10 on a day shift. We ran that for, 6, 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
So it was an exhausted staff, to say the least.
I bet. Yes. Thanks.
So Jeff, in that process, we've heard recently how important it was, meeting with the union shop stewards and, getting good coordination going into the event when you have good advance notice of it like this. Talk about the importance of that.
Of what now in particular?
Getting the union involved and, getting everybody on board early in the process.
Right.
So that everybody's singing from the same page on the workload and everything.
Yeah, everybody gets it. The one thing about our core team and the Weather Service employees across the country is it's mission first. There's a very strong dedication to the mission. So fortunately, we didn't have a lot of problems. We had 2 people that we were called back from annual leave, and I gave up my annual leave that weekend, and we literally had all hands on deck, and we needed every single one of them. We were staffing a social media desk 24/7, which we had never done before, and that was a huge help, both for pushing messages out, but also getting messaging back in and fishing for reports through Twitter, through Facebook, and working in NWS chat and things like that.
So this was the first major hurricane in the U.S. since really social media got its legs under it. So
definitely, and there's a team in the Weather Service that from remote offices, they'll support the impacted offices and help mine social media for them, and that team was crucial and a huge help for us and Corpus and Lake Charles as well. All 3 of us. We're struggling through a different aspect of Harvey, and Harvey was almost 2 storms. The impact of the initial hurricane, and then it just became an inland flood storm. But then it went back over water. I think our strongest gusts were with Harvey as it went back over the water Tuesday, as it went by Galveston Island and then over towards southeast Texas. So it was certainly a unique storm and nothing that I would like to have to go through again.
So a lot of organizations are realizing now, especially after this event, that, they're getting messages, life-threatening situations directed at them. What do they do with them? And I suppose that even happens to the Weather Service from time to time during these big events.
Yeah, right. I mean, we were ground zero, coming into the office through the next several days after that initial deluge, Saturday night, Sunday morning. We had Coast Guard helicopters doing high water rescues that you could watch from the office, pulling people off the roofs and things. It was very surreal. It's one thing to I've worked some national disasters, and I've been around. I was around the May 3rd '99 tornado in Oklahoma City. I've seen it, but I've never had it just like this. The scope of this, it's really just hard to fathom. The numbers that Steve put up. It's one thing to see them as numbers, but when you really try to grasp the size and scope of those numbers, it's incredible. There really wasn't a community in the Houston metropolitan area, which is a huge metropolitan area. And everyone's ever been to Metro Houston, it's a gigantic metropolitan area. There wasn't a single community that wasn't impacted, that didn't have some flooded homes. If you lived near a retention pond or a creek or any sort of watershed, you likely flooded. I knew people personally who were impacted. One of the persons that died actually gave my daughter her driving test the month prior to Harvey. So it's certainly something that just surrounded you. And when you bring that into work and you try to separate that out, but we are human, and that's a hard thing. It was a stressful thing for a lot of us to live through it. We had people Saturday night trying to stay on mission, having spouses call saying, "Hey, we got water starting to come into the home," and so you're trying to help your family situation, but you have to stay on mission and get the crucial warnings out. So we really, the National Weather Service at times really are first responders, where we have to stay mission first, and we can't. And then same thing with Steve and his team. At some point, you have a job, you have a message. You guys in the media as well, and that sometimes we can't just run home and take care of things when you get that panic call from a loved one that I need help.
Yeah.
And not being in an evacuation zone, you didn't have the benefit of having your families evacuated like some of the coastal offices did in the direct impact areas.
That's correct. We had some employees that send their families away. They were just afraid of what could happen. Like I said, I was dealing with trying to get my son to college. My wife and son left Friday morning to get out and hit the road to get him moved in. And so that helped a bit, not having as much stress at home. I still had my 16-year-old daughter at home, so I was trying to get back and forth the best I could. But, I knew if I got home, when I get back to the office the next morning, and if I got to the office, would I be able to get home at night? You're just dealing with that kind of stresses in addition just to the constant calls and briefing the uncertainty, because, Steve alluded to it, it kept raining. It wasn't just one night of rain. We still had, 6 to 10 inches the next day or the next days. Somebody kept getting it. And emergency managers like, "Hey, when's this going to stop?" And then beyond that, then you have the watersheds that are rising. So then you start getting the releases from Addicks and Barker Reservoir into Buffalo Bayou. And so you start getting more flooding as you get through the week. We were dealing with levees that were starting to get overtopped into communities, and trying to help Harris County message that out with civil emergency messages, and dealing with flash flood emergencies for possible levees and things like that. So it was such a large event. It's just really hard to kind of wrap your mind around it.
The way I looked at it was, especially in the night, I don't know why you guys need to explain why our floods, 80% of them are at night, but that's usually when they are. But during the day too, but especially at night, we didn't know what curveball was going to be thrown at us. They kept coming every few hours, and they were just nonstop for like 4 days, 5 days in a row. And it kind of wears on you after a while. You just don't know. They just come out of left field. You don't know where they're coming from. And we just said, what else is going to go wrong, type of thing. But like Jeff said, you got to stay professional. You got to message correctly to the elected officials and to the public, and keep going, and keep encouraging people to keep going.
Yeah, we were watching in real time a lot of your flood emergency messages on that, especially Monday and Tuesday, Jeff. And it seemed like the broadcast meteorologists were almost overwhelmed, because they were trying to cover a news story and a weather story still at the same time. And some of those messages wouldn't get mentioned on air for a long period of time.
Right.
And, it just seemed like they were inundated, not only with the flooding, but inundated with just the information.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Steve said, at one point I wasn't able to watch TV. So, I have it on, I'm not listening to it, but just trying to see the images, trying to gauge what's happening. But the same token, we're continuing to brief for the next day, and for the media, that they did a great job. But yeah, trying to deal with the story at hand, and then try to message like, "Hey, we could get another round tonight, or these other areas may flood." It really stressed pretty much every bit of the weather enterprise. There's no doubt.
Well, Houston's experienced amazing economic growth over the past decade. Does any of this put a black eye on that? Does it make you fear, or is there some tapping the brakes in terms of that economic commerce growth in the Houston area?
There's been a lot of press on that, but I don't really think so. I think it'll be a short time, but I think it's strong economically, and a lot of people still move here. So our job is just to be, as we say, be more resilient next time. We make improvements after every event. We decide, well, what can we do better next time? And so this one we'll make some improvements too in a lot of ways. But like I said, we're not going to design for Harvey. That's for sure.
Not for 1 in a 20,000-year flood.
No. Yeah, I have yet to meet somebody who flooded that was moving. Katrina, a lot of people left. They're transplanted to Houston, to Dallas, to other areas, to Atlanta, and they never came back. But we didn't really have that here. A lot of people had to go elsewhere for months at a time and resettle. So I'm not sure that's going to have that big a hit.
That's good.
I've talked to a lot of people who flooded. Homes are flooded, and some I know pretty well, and others I met for the first time. But those that have flooded three or four times previously, they're all ready to go. I mean, and a lot of them are selling their homes. They don't want to go through it again. They're selling to investors. But it's a person-to-person, family decision. Except in communities that flooded for the first time or haven't flooded too often, they're getting together as neighbors and saying, what are you going to do? Are you going to stay? Because they want to keep their neighborhoods together, their communities together, and they don't want it to change. So it's really emotional for a lot, 100,000 or plus families right now trying to decide what to do.
So someone dusted off some report from 1996, Steve, and said, hey, if we had done all these things back then, the flooding wouldn't have been as bad. What's your comments to that? And what are the things that are, probably likely to happen as a result of Harvey in terms of changing the infrastructure?
Well, we have been, Harris County Flood Control District, we've been on top of all the ideas and of how to make flooding less and how to address reservoirs or levees or whatever. Sure, hindsight's 20/20, but what we tell people, what we say is our job is to try to take care of the worst first. Who floods the most? Who has the most risk? And that's where our investment has been for the last 35 years since I've been in Harris County Flood Control District. And I've helped to try to decide that sometimes. Where should we invest the federal dollars, local dollars, and our efforts? And we've been doing a great job because the amount of flooding that occurs now, I was talking about this 10 years ago, is nothing like it was 30 years ago. Through structural projects, through buyouts, through public education, through everything. It's, the risks are a lot less than they are now. But there's a long ways to go, and we'll never build ourselves away from flooding. There's not enough money to do that, and nobody wants to spend all that. So we just have to be ready and just build things and design things and make the best decisions we can so that we can recover from the floods faster and with less economic impact next time.
I know a lot of people blamed a lot of the problems on lack of zoning regulations. Is that changing, or will that stay sort of the independent Texas spirit?
I don't think zoning will change, and I don't know for sure, but my personal forecast is that's not going to change. But there are both Harris County and Harris County Flood Control. We have some of the best regulations and criteria for new developments. We started in 1984. I got to help write the first criteria manual and policy manual, and I'm on the third update now. And so, I'm part of national organizations, and we compare notes and see what do you do here, what do you do there, and we're right up at the top as far as of our criteria across the board. Most people you read in the paper, you don't think that because everyone's saying that we don't do that, but we do. But like I said, I'm sure there'll be some adjustments based on this storm. Because we do want to make sure that we can recover better and maybe help reduce some of the damage and the deaths and all that for next time.
Well, we've certainly gone into extra innings here, Brian Peters.
Yep.
That seems to be happening a lot lately with all these hurricane shows we've been doing. So,
now you're not telling me about the game, are you, Bill?
No. only WeatherBrains extra innings. I'm not.
Okay.
Not telegraphing anything there.
Okay.
If I did, it was totally an accident because I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah. So Jeff Evans, how long have you been there in Houston?
I came into, so I guess just over 3 years.
Outstanding. So
right before the rain started.
It's always fun to watch you do the awards for the National Weather Association, Jeff. So any plugs out there for ends in the Weather Enterprise to make sure they
absolutely
nominate.
Nominate. Exactly. That's how the system works.
And so there really aren't any opening, closing type deadlines, I guess, for those sort of things, at least from an opening side.
Right.
When do you start looking at all those to pull them together?
Well, we look at them as they come in. So as they come in, we'll look at them, and then for the NWA side, we have to have a deadline so that we can get them for that annual award show. So sometime usually in June or late May is when we have to put a hard deadline. But we'll still take them, but they'll just be in effect for that following annual meeting if they don't make that deadline. But otherwise, there really isn't a deadline. They're always open. And so if you see something and you recognize good talent or a great job, hey, submit the nomination. Let's recognize some of these folks. And there's so much great work being done out there and all around the weather enterprise, private companies, the government, media. There's great work, and a lot of it we don't know, and we don't know about them if they don't put it out there.
Well, thank you so much for your hard work in that area. It's extremely important, that recognition, Jeff.
Thank you.
All right, this is the time of the night when we come around to picks of the week, and there's not many of us left here, and I haven't warned either of our guests, Brian, that they had picks of the week, so their brains will be whirring here. Brian Peters, you have a pick of the week?
Yes, I ran across an interesting site. I don't think anybody's used this one before, but it's the NOAA Environmental Visualization Laboratory. And of course, weather is a very visual profession, and they've got just some fascinating still photos, videos, animations. So it's one you really should check out.
Outstanding. Great pick of the week. So, Jeff, I don't know if you've got something top of mind that you'd like to share it's a book, a journal article, an app, a website, a tool that somebody in our community could use?
I'd have to think on that one. I will say that with Harvey, there were a lot of the kind of private places to go on the web to look at data, model data. And hey, those are great. Tropical tidbits.
Levi does a great job, doesn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Pivotal weather. There's several great sites out there. I just want to applaud the folks that do that, and that's great stuff.
Yeah, we all love all that stuff, from the free sites to the pay sites to
absolutely
everything in between. That data is just amazing. Steve, anything you could share as a pick of the week?
Well, I guess I better talk about the National Hydrologic Warning Council.
Yeah, you're the tallest hog in the trough over there, as James.
Yes. I even got to be president when I actually attended one of our national conferences. I wasn't there that I got to be president. I actually was there. But we have a great board and great folks. And of course, the Weather Service folks are members and attend our conferences, and we appreciate that. As well as the USGS. I got to plug the USGS as well.
Oh yeah.
So y'all guys are invaluable. But go to the National Hydrologic Warning Council website to see what we're about. It's a tough job, and it's a lot of professions and a lot of different skills that it takes. But when you have an event like Harvey, you really get to hone those skills.
Well, let us know if there's any way we can work together through the National Weather Association, because there seems to be a lot of bridges there that could be crossed between our two organizations. That's really good.
Sounds great.
So Brian Peters, I'm going to take the foghorn tonight because I just messed around here getting too excited about this show to do anything. So if you could mimic the foghorn for me, that would
That's
pretty good impression.
That was probably pretty bad.
It sounded good over here. It sounded good in Houston.
Yeah.
The ships and the Galveston ship channel, huh?
That's
Yeah,
right.
exactly. So, well, that's just outstanding. Well, again, I thank you, gentlemen, for staying up late with us. I don't know if you knew what you were getting into when we started down this road, but you've made it an outstanding show for us, and one that'll be remembered for a long, long time. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Bill. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
Well, WeatherBrains is the weekly netcast that's all about weather. We do this show on Monday nights, generally from 8:30 till 10, or lately, since James has to leave about 10 till 10, we tend to hang around a little bit longer and do a little extra time. But until next week, Brian, who's our guest next week?
I have no idea. I can't look that far ahead.
Well, I have down that it's Brian Norcross, but we moved him up to a couple of weeks ago.
That's right.
So
yeah.
I guess I better start finding a guest. So listeners out there, if you're Johnny on the spot always with those guest suggestions. So
one came in during the show too.
Oh, good. Well, that may be your guest for next week. So we're going to have Pam Heiselman on November 6th. I'm looking forward to that. Jeff, I know you probably know Pam real well.
Yes, absolutely.
Warn on forecast, and on Monday, October 3rd.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I didn't realize you had spent some time up there, Jeff. That's really cool.
Right, long time.
Yeah, so Pam's one of my favorite people, and we'll be excited to have her on. Josh Eachus will join us from, I think it's WBRZ in Baton Rouge. He's going to be talking about social media, and maybe I'll get to have my rant next week if Kevin is back about social media. So we'll see. But until next week, when the guest to be decided it will be with us, I'm Bill Murray for the whole team here at WeatherBrains. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Monday night.
All right,
Steve,
thanks. Go
Steve
Astros.
and Jeff, thank you
Go
so much.
Astros, that's right.
Yeah, go Astros.
Hope your team wins.
All right, man. Thanks a
Thanks,
bunch.
guys. Thank
Thank you, Brian, for staying up late.
doing a golf match here. They're done. All right. And once again, we have 13 people watching this when there's nothing here. Great show tonight. I always look forward to listening to the show in coming days because, as many of you know, I work nights and I'm a little busy here and sometimes we kind of distracted. But anyway, great show tonight. Thank you, guys. We appreciate you watching on the WeatherBrains side. We'll see you all next Monday night. You'll have a great weekend. God bless. Bye-bye.